to week 4 of the Eternal Tournament series. I am one of your hosts, Frank Moon, also known as Truedawn, and I am joined by LocoPojo.
Hello.
And we are going to be jumping right into our first round 1 match in just a moment here. It will be between Redworld and Bodeez. Bodeez is on a Fire Justice Time Armory build, so a little something different. And Redworld is on a more conventional big combat deck.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting matchup. There should be a lot of good back and forth. These are two very slow, traditionally value-oriented decks, so that tends to lead to a lot of good exchanges and interesting interactions. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, certainly. The big combat deck is going to be looking to just get out their big minions and protect them. Generally, the biggest weakness of Armory is creatures that are bigger than Armory's weapons. Their only outs to those are their Vanquishes, however many they're playing, and Harsh Rule. So if Red World gets out an early Sandstorm Titan or something like that, a large Mystic Ascendant that goes unanswered, that could be a way for him to get ahead and win the game.
Yep, it can be very problematic. Of course, most of the Armory decks right now are running Rise to the Challenge, which can typically get you just above the Sandstorm Titan with your Auric Runehammers and the like. Still, with 4 Great Parliaments in Redworld's deck, that will allow him to generate like a lot of extra units. And the other problem that Armory decks can traditionally have is dealing with multiple units at a time. So if the game goes late, Redworld may be favored to win, but Armory decks do have a lot of extra pressure and can often end the game before that kind of happen.
Yeah, certainly. If the game goes long enough, those parliaments are going to be a huge problem, each one likely demanding a harsh rule. If it gets to 3 or more owls, it's going to be a pretty big problem.
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few of those. So we'll see where the harsh rules land and what they land on. Looks like we have the Armory deck ready to go, and we are starting the game now. Or the challenge has been issued.
It's also interesting to see that Bodeez has split up his harsh rules, 2 main board, 2 sideboard for this event. I've been pretty lukewarm on harsh rule and Armory. I understand why you need it, but it's in like certain meta games when you're like playing in the mirror or against with control decks, it's just so hard to get value from it when like things like Throne Ward and Crown Watch Paladin are so prevalent. So I like the hedge there of just having access to that effect, but not so much that you'll lose the game from drawing multiples.
Yeah, Harsh Rule is definitely a card that you generally want to play when you're behind on tempo. If you play it while you're ahead on tempo, or like while you have a decent amount of stuff established, you tend to lose some cards in the bargain. You won't necessarily get that 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 that big sweepers are known for. But if you're playing an Armory deck, you tend to at least keep your weapons. So there can be that value there. But I think that, yeah, it's pretty reasonable to run only 2 of if you're playing an aggressive plan.
Yeah, when you have your own 3 and 4 drops, it's not generally ideal to like curve out 3 and 4, and then you have this harsh roll in your hand that you can't really play, and you have nothing to do on turn 5, and it gets pretty awkward. So if you're being proactive in the early game, harsh roll gets a lot worse, which it looks like Bodeez is with Combre Healer and Copperhall Bailiff.
Yeah, that one of Copperhall Bailiff, definitely a useful card that could be pretty beneficial. Of course, like the Armory decks are running a very similar card, which is Throne Warden. Tends to have a bit more of an impact on the early game, but not quite as fast as that single Copperhall Bailiff.
Yep, and hopefully we'll get this game started soon. The players just figuring out how to get things going here, but we will be jumping into this game very shortly, I assure you.
Now we're waiting on Bobby's to accept the challenge, and looks like it just expired, so we'll be back into it in just a moment. So right now we've got 56 people showing up for the Swiss. Is that correct?
Yes, 56 people. We have a 6-round tournament that we'll be cutting to top 8 after those 6 rounds.
Of course, for every game win, people will be winning a point for their wins that will help them to get invited to the Invitational at the end of the month. And, okay, it looks like we're into the game now. Redworld and Bodeez starting off. Bodeez starting off with a 2-power hand that's only It has a little bit of an awkward power base to start, but has Find the Way for fixing, so he'll get where he needs to go slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's very slowly, but you will get there. He does have essentially 4 power in his hand. It's just that 4 power comes into play at the cost of a lot of mana over time. Both actual power cards coming into play tapped, and then the 2 Find the Ways costing 2 mana, and then getting a power that comes into play depleted as well. So
Redworld would really like to draw a undepleted sigil here in the next 2 turns, so you can play the Combre banner and then immediately Find the Way. He'll still be a turn behind on Sandstorm Titan, regardless. So it'll be a little while before Redworld establishes any tempo at all.
yeah, and we see another Find the Way. So again, he'll get there. It's just going to take a while. But Bodeez will be playing out these Combre healers. It's not the most pressure in the world. They may elect to play the Runehammer on an empty board next turn to establish pressure. They do the Throne Warden follow-up and to see what they choose there. But Redworld's just going to be just finding a bunch of ways here.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that you see Auric Runehammer for pressure. It might be correct in this particular matchup. Usually you want to make sure that you get the value out of the Auric Runehammer. Tend to leave it behind. I think here Bodeez definitely would benefit from putting it down, but he might not know that, or like he might not have a good read on what Redworld's hand is. And of course, with the possibility of Desert Marshal, the possibility of basically any small unit like Valkyrie Enforcer, it's not a terribly safe bet to play.
I think if he had the 5th power in hand for Throne Warden, it becomes a lot more defensible, because if they play something like, if Redworld plays something like Sandstorm Titan on turn 4, he has Vanquish for it. If they play a smaller minion, you can play Throne Warden and eat it with the extra armor. Yep. We see that they elected to play the Armor Smith. Now this turn, they play the Runehammer for pressure. And now they have that line I just talked about available. If something big comes down, they have a Vanquish. If something small comes down, they could have the Throne Warden.
Yeah, and Redworld's in trouble. The Sandstorm Titan on 5 is not fast enough, and Bodeez has an answer to it in the form of Vanquish, so he's pressing another 8 damage this turn. That puts Redworld on essentially a 1-turn clock. He has to have another answer here, and if Bodeez draws something that kills it, that'll be the game. See what happens from Redworld.
Redworld has a choice between Harsh Rule to deal with the 2 creatures, or Great Parliament to possibly trade with the weapon. Neither option's great. He ends up going with Great Parliament. I think it's fine. The weapon's going to be harder to deal with in the long term. The creature's just always going to be there.
Either option cuts the damage in half. The main thing about this is that he has the possibility of defending himself from 6 damage this way if his opponent, for some reason, decides to attack early. But that Throne Warden coming down protects the Auric Runehammer, and of course we still have those 2 units on the board, so he takes almost the full amount of damage, and it doesn't look like he has an easy way out.
Yeah, and Redworld will fire off the concession there. That Throne Warden kind of puts him in the clamps, because the Harsh Roll doesn't kill enough creatures, and no creature can block everything available, so Redworld just decides to concede.
Bodeez played his hand correctly, playing the early Auric Runehammer and making sure to get enough pressure onto the big Combre deck to finish it out, for punishing it for its late start. It's Find the Ways, it's many, many fixes. Obviously, that deck would have done very well if it had gotten to its late game, but that's specifically what you want to deny. So we can already see Redworld cutting out some of the higher cost units in his deck and possibly moving his curve down a little bit, progress into the next game.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting what plan you would like to go with against armor. You do have 2 available options depending upon the tools your deck has. You can try and go underneath them and get ahead of board, make their weapons bad, always present multiple units. Or you can go over the top, present large threats that they have a very hard time dealing with.
There are 4 decays in Redworld sideboard, and thus far he hasn't cited a single one out, so that might be the central part of his plan. It'll be interesting to see if that's too many. I think that you can have too many decays against an armory deck, but at the same time, this should be a very good way to gain some health back.
Yeah, certainly. And that having that many answers to weapons allows you to change how you can play the game. If the decays are insulating you from weapons, it allows you to just play out singular units at a time and not extend too far into potential harsh rules.
Yeah, it's definitely very useful, and as long as he can keep like 1 Sandstorm Titan or 1 Parliament alive against the Vanquishes and the like, then he should be able to defend against the pressure from the unit half of the Throne Wardens and the Armory.
And if we see in Bodeez sideboard, he has 3 Protect, 1 Ruin, 1 Vanquish, 1 Fortis Mage, 2 Parliament, 2 Harsh Rule, 1 Lumen Defender, 2 Marshal, 1 Stronghold Visage, and 1 Sword of the Sky King. I would assume that the Vanquish would come in to deal with the bigger minions, possibly the Great Parliament. It looks like, can't see anything below 5 mana, but I think he might have run Parliament. We see the great sort of the Sky King coming in. He did not bring a Great Parliament.
There's also
not a lot of options.
Unit component. Champion of Glory. We have Chancellor Seraph, and of course we have Mystic Ascendant for that card draw and that extra kind of beef. So I think that like this deck is sort of adjusting against those decays and trying to put more creature pressure on the board that is difficult to deal with on that front. See how well that works out. I think it should be a pretty good side in. It seems like a pretty good read of the situation, and we'll see if it allows him to take the next game.
Yeah, it's certainly just like a basic leveling scenario where level 1 against Armory is, well, I'll side in things that kill weapons. And then in response to that, if you're the Armory player, it's like, well, I'll just make my deck in such sideboard into a deck that is not as vulnerable to things like that as it would normally be. The creatures accomplish that.
Seeing a lot of non-unit threats here, or of non-weapon threats here from Bodeez. Like the Champion of Glories were already in the deck, but and so are the Seraphs. So there's actually like quite a bit of stuff in the deck that isn't really traditional Armory and is more of a late game value scenario. These things are still vulnerable to harsh rules and silences, which are things that are just very, very common in the big Combre deck. So we'll see how well they fare against the main board. But as a side choice, I think it definitely works out quite well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And yeah, Bodhi's deck looks a lot more like a big Combre deck, kind of splashing a little like some of the more powerful elements of the Armory package, like Rise and Runehammer and stuff. It's not really as devoted to the Armory strategy as we would normally see.
When you're a 3-color deck, you get access to a lot of different good stuff, and it's definitely a question of what your strategy is. And you can actually have some really interesting shifting sideboards. The downside of that is that you don't have quite as reliable a deck, and we're seeing this right away as Bodeez draws 2 red, 2 green, and no yellow for that Find the Way. So he may not be able to play any of his time cards for.
He does have some plays in the meantime. He can play this Artisan, which he's going to play anyway. If he draws another power of any color, he can possibly play this Orc Runehammer as the Vanquish, the Harsh Rule. So it's not the best, but he does have plays available to him.
Yeah, and none of his fixing is available, but all of the cards that he that are actual gas are currently in the colors that he's playing. So he'll definitely be able to make tempo plays for as long as he has power to play. Knight Chancellor Seraph coming down, definitely a good value card that will pressure for a while. If we see the Auric Runehammer at any point, then Seraph will probably say goodbye, but Temple Scribe is a really good answer to that as well. So there are at least 2 units down to defend against the Auric Runehammer.
Yeah, it's a little awkward if Bodeez was able to deploy the Runehammer on that turn that just happened. It would have been very good. He could defend it from the 1/1 with his Armor Smith, but now he's a little bit far behind. He can only play either the Vanquish or the Champion this turn. So now it's kind of just time walked. Like he didn't really do anything. He's in the same spot he was last turn. It's a pretty unfortunate place to be, but we'll see these creatures come in again and no blocks.
Yeah, you have to elect to kill that Sandstorm Titan. It's simply too much pressure early on, and it looks like at this point Redworld is now the aggro deck, so we are going to go ahead and see good stuff out of that.
There is the time source. And I think we just need to see Bodeez bridge the gap until this Harsh Rule to stabilize, and then maybe he could start making headway with this Stone Scar Maul and the Orc Runehammer.
He's choosing to use his Find the Ways to make sure that he has the 5th power for that Harsh Rule, and that should be very, very good. Once that Harsh Rule does happen, he'll be playing a depleted power into it, so it won't happen until turn 6. But that should provide him with enough value to actually start pushing through with these weapons. But we see the first decay out of Redworld.
Yeah, but Redworld is kind of out of gas. If a Harsh Rule comes down, his only proactive play left is the Mystic Ascendant, and that's probably the most powerful one in his deck. But that's it. If Redworld is able to deal with that, if the Maul is able to trade with it, for example, if Redworld plays Mystic Ascendant, plays a power, doesn't have mana for the decay, and then the Maul trades with it, Redworld's left with nothing.
Yeah,
depending upon with a couple of draws of sleep.
Yeah, Bodeez uses the Auric Runehammer to buy himself a little time against the Seraph and save himself a little bit of health. Redworld doesn't bite with the decay because obviously you can just easily dispense with that. and that'll give him some pretty good options early on. He decides to play Mystic Ascendant, which is
A little bit of an
pretty greedy
overextension.
play into the Harsh Rule, but also does draw him a new card.
Yeah, we'll definitely see the Harsh Rule come down here. Trading, I guess it's like card advantage kind of neutral, but it definitely favors Bodeez to keep the game going later. He has this Stone Scar Maul that could potentially eat this. It's Combo Healer. We will likely see the Decay take care of it, though.
It's definitely not fully neutral with the silences going on. The fact that Bodeez has just some of the weaker and like smaller cards on his side of the board. So we do see the Decay out of Redworld, Combre Healer plus Decay. So now Redworld has the slight tempo advantage, but Bodeez will be playing a Seraph soon, and he'll be the one with the Seraph against Big Combre.
Yeah, no, you can't get greedy if you're Bodeez here, like try to get to 11 mana to activate the Seraph the same turn you play. You just have to play it, say, kill it this turn, I get to start snowballing, and we'll see if Redworld has the answer. And it doesn't look like it does.
It's pretty hard for a Combre deck to kill Seraph, actually. It's one of the reasons why Seraph is a strong card in that matchup, Combre versus Combre, because obviously your major tools for killing things are Harsh Rule and Vanquish. And you don't usually want to Harsh Rule a single unit, although you can certainly wait until Seraph goes to 8 and then Harsh Rule that result.
And here we do see, though, like the Redworld in a situation where it needs to either drop or a creature that deals with a creature that is better than Seraph or matches the Seraph, or a threat or a way to deal with the Seraph. He draws Decay, which currently doesn't really do anything on the board. The Seraph is going to be able to keep snowballing the game out of control.
Yeah, Bodeez has a choice here. He can either Rakano Artisan to buff all of his weapons and then Seraph, or he can rise to the challenge for a big weapon to try and seal up the game. I'm guessing he's going to go for the value play. It's typically a good idea to use your Seraph as long as it's on the board, since that is a threat that currently Redworld doesn't have a way to deal with. But he's seriously considering that rise to the challenge.
Think that I would, if in Bodeez spot, I would definitely rise for Ikaria here. Knowing deck lists, Bodeez knows that there are 4 Decay coming in from the sideboard. Any weapon you get could certainly be hit by. He's already seen 1, but there's still 3 left. Ikaria is very challenging for Redworld to deal with. Yep. That would be my pick, but it would certainly be defensible to get a large weapon or even a Mystic Ascendant. And you see the Ikaria come out.
Any of those would be pretty good options. It looks like he is going to find the way here. He'll be able to play Ikaria whenever he needs it. And at the moment, he doesn't actually have to play it. He can just keep it as a answer to the board. But we have a Mystic Ascendant down from Redworld, and that is a card that Bodeez cannot answer at the moment.
I don't think he's going to need to. I think this Ikaria is just going to deal 7 a turn, get the Warcry 5, and there's going to be so many powerful threats coming off the top from Bodeez that the card advantage from Mystic Ascendant might not matter. Although this Great Parliament, on the other hand, does allow for Redworld to block the Ikaria.
Yeah, the Mystic Ascendant isn't just card advantage, and it's also a giant 8/8 that will continue to beat in for Bodeez. So both players gaining a substantial amount of both size and card advantage. Like, there are some big units coming down, and a triple Great Parliament is definitely going to be a bit too much for this particular side of the board to handle. Bodeez decides to use Seraph, try and get a flyer. He ends up with a rather huge Champion of Progress anyways. Activated on one side and then doubled. That makes a 24/24. But I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
So Bodeez is an interesting spot here. He could choose to attack with the... Well, he can't attack with the card. He only trades with 1 Owl, so he's going to have to sit back and block. The 24/24 does check the Mystic Ascendant. The Ikaria eats one of the Owls. So I don't think that Redworld really has great attacks. The Sandstorm Titan doesn't change a lot. He can attack with... Like, I think what he's doing here is going to attack with the 3 Parliaments and then play the other Parliament and say, I have lethal, draw Harsh Rule, or you're dead.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty solid play. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Bodeez does have the Harsh Rule and didn't get a flyer off of Seraph. Throne Warden doesn't gain him enough health, so that is the game. And I believe we are going into game 3.
Yes, so we will see a climactic game 3 against these 2 players. This is going to be a very close matchup because both decks are pretty similar in their general game plan of what they're trying to do. They're both a little bit bigger mid-range decks with solid threats. Like, their answers differ in the fact that one has wasps and marshals and stuff, and the other has weapons. But on a baseline level, they're both trying to do the same thing.
Big Cambrai definitely has a little bit more of an advantage in the late game with those great parliaments, with the extra Mystic Ascendants, that kind of thing. Icaria is basically the only major, huge seize control of the game card in the Armory deck. Most of it is about more incremental advantage and pressure. And of course, we've seen that seize control of the game and get the advantage that it needs to win out. It's big enough that it can deal with most of the Cambrai's big stuff, but in this last game, basically, there wasn't any early aggression. The fixing wasn't there. And so Cambrai was able to basically maintain for the first half of the game and even pressure the Armory deck. And then once it got into the late game, it was just over.
Yeah, I do agree that once Big Comrade gets in the late game, it's going to generally be favored. Its big top end threats are much more potent than the Armory decks, and they have a lot bigger quantity of them as well.
Yep. So we will see how this next game goes. Overall, sides have come in. I'm not sure if there were any major changes made. I didn't see anything, but we might see a couple new cards. Starting off, we have Find the Way into Mystic Ascendant and Steward of the Past in Redworld's side, as well as a single Decay to deal with some armory threats. This is a pretty good starter. It should give him a decent amount of ways to pause Bodhi's strategy.
Yeah, here and we do see the Stewart, which is a card we don't usually see a lot. It's not played a whole bunch, but it is very good against something like Armory that has Throne Wardens and Icarias, which you can just make a 5-mana 4/4 without text or a 7-mana 5/5 without text. Both of those essentially deal with those units.
Bodeez is in trouble. He has 3 colors with only 2 of them again, and this time his colors do not include his gas. So the Recano Artisans, which he desperately wants to play early, are not going to be available. And Steward of the Past silencing Mystic Ascendant means that he's lost a pretty potent late game threat.
Yeah, that card is pretty much non-functional now. We will see this Orc Runehammer come down to deal with Stewart profitably, but Bodeez is definitely in trouble. He does not have a lot to do. This Harsh Rule and the other Runehammer could stem the bleeding, buy him some time until he draws power, but he's going to be under pressure.
Now, Redworld has to decide between Valkyrie Enforcer and Decay to kill this Auric Runehammer. Neither one's a particularly good choice. Valkyrie Enforcer saves the Decay for later, which is good against those larger weapon threats, but obviously he is going to lose that unit.
And the Valkyrie would be a little bit more dangerous here if Redworld was concerned about Throne Warden, but because the Steward came down just last turn, he saw the hand, all the creatures in hand, Throne Warden wasn't one of them, he could reasonably assume that Bodeez wouldn't have it. And Bodeez does finally find the red source, get on board with this Artisan, and the Orc Runehammer is going to deal with the Seraph, so... Oh no, the Decay will take care of it.
Yeah, there are 2 Mystic Ascendants in Redworld's hand, and unlike the one in Bodeez, neither of them are silenced. So that's a significant amount of advantage that Redworld is going to be netting. It should be pretty hard for Bodeez to come back from this without a Harsh Rule. There is one in his hand, of course, but after he throws the first one, the second Ascendant will come down.
And Bodeez is going to need a lot more Harsh Rules in this one. Between the Seraph, the Mystic Ascendant, and Parliament, all of these are just incredibly potent threats.
Yeah, we have Find the Way. That doesn't quite allow him to play Ascendant and draw a card here, but he can play the Seraph down, or just go straight for the double Parliament, which is a very, very potent threat against Armory. This is one of the hardest cards for Armory to deal with as a single card, just on account of the fact that the double Owls are big enough to wreck pretty much any weapon that you can play, and will always deal with the single target removal just fine.
2 creatures is generally the spot you want your board to be in against Armory, because it's enough to contest weapons, and it's not so many that you get blown out by Harsh Rule.
Yeah, it also helps that they're big flyers. Typically, Armory can defend their weapons against smaller tokens by having a decent amount of cheap bodies on the board, but none of that's going to happen here, and Bodeez can only kill the Owls. The Mystic Ascendants are still down and pushing. This is starting to look pretty bad for Bodeez.
And here's where the Champion of Glory looks a little bit underwhelming. The game has gotten to a point where this card that is traditionally good against aggro and good at blocking in the early game is just severely outclassed at this point. And even in this matchup on the whole, I don't know what stage of the game this champion is particularly good.
Yeah, it's good for the early pressure, of course, but there wasn't any early pressure from Bodeez. He had the power problems at the very beginning, and he never actually had the Champion of Glory in his hand. Wasn't a very good top deck for him, so we will see him concede, and that will be 2-1 for Redworld.
Yep, that was a very close match all the way through. Bodeez encountered mana problems a couple times, but generally both people got to play, got to enact their game plan, and it looks like the bigger top end from Big Combre just was too much for the Armory deck to deal with.
Mm-hmm. It's a general rule that if you have two decks of very similar natures, that the one that is slightly slower is favored to win. We saw that in this particular instance. But, I think there was also a lot of problems with just basically not enough early pressure on account of that, on account of those power issues from Bodeez.
Yeah, definitely. It's also interesting to see like the different iterations of Armory that people are coming with. We saw it do very well last week. And people are just going to see, oh, well, that was the deck that did very good. I want to innovate on that, or I want to play that list. And we see Bodeez issuing the Shadow for the time-oriented cards, which I do like. It just didn't work out for him here.
I wanted to see more of those Strongholds Visage. It's a card that's been nerfed to 5 power recently, but it's definitely not a... It's definitely a fun one in an Armory-based deck. Wouldn't have really worked in this particular matchup, so we didn't see it come in from the side.
Yeah, it's still like powerful inevitability. Like it is a unique effect. It's just very hard to justify taking off turn 5 to play a card that does nothing that turn in this metagame.
Yeah, so opening setup from Bodeez was pretty strong. We saw that he kept the Champion of Glories in the main board, and as you said, that might not have been the best choice. They're not terribly strong against the early silences from Combre. They're not terribly great at pressuring in the way that Armory decks want to pressure, or at least not against the Combre decks. If you have the torches and the like, it's possible that that might have helped him out a little bit. But yeah, I think most of Bodhi's issues were just not quite having enough fixing, not being able to access his find the ways. Yeah, I think we will see if there's going to be changes. See how this particular deck progresses in the tournament.
Yeah, we have